We've got new Douser Dualies coming out. We now know that its kit is going to be Burst Bomb, Triple Ink Strike, and I think that that kit is primed to make this one of the biggest second kit glow-ups that we've had on a weapon in Splatoon 3. Back when I did the weapon select on this, my take on the weapon was that the main weapon is very strong. It compared pretty decently well to monsters like the Squeezer and the Splatana Stamper for the niche of this like super long range, midline slaying skirmisher kind of weapon. And the big problem with it was just its main weapon isn't so much stronger in any particular way than the Squeezer or the Stamper that you would run it on the merits of the main weapon alone, and the kits are definitely not better than what those have. But now the kit on the Douser Dualies is, I don't want to say better, but it's definitely going to have niches for sure. So quick review of the insane properties of this weapon. So this outranges the Squeezer. These shots are fall off, but even the confirmed damage spot is further back than it is for the Squeezer. It is slightly shorter ranged than the Splatana Stamper Vertical Slash and the Jet Squelcher. So that's the territory that we're in there. But it also has a dodge roll fire mode that gives it pretty decent DPS. If the Squeezer is mashing at the theoretical max speed, the Squeezer does actually splat faster in that it's got the same fire rate and does more damage. It does a 3-shot instead. But realistically, at a human level, I don't know that we're going to be getting like absolute max fire rate out of the Squeezer a lot of the time. It's definitely a very difficult thing to do and to do consistently mechanically in a match. So in a lot of cases, it may just be straight up comparable. Now this is only 25.5 damage per shot, both on the long range mode and on the dodge roll mode. So you've got to be really careful with fall off to make sure that you're not turning it into a 5-shot, but that doesn't tend to be too much of a problem in my experience. Like, I've definitely hit from pretty long range, and I've never really had too much of an issue getting all of the shots down that I needed to get the splat, as long as they were aimed correctly. I think at that range, the biggest thing you're fighting with is simply the fact that the shots go back and forth from reticle to reticle, and making sure that all of those line up so that you're not missing shots that way. So this weapon is really interesting in that in any matchup outside of like the backline matchups, or maybe like Splatana Stamper specifically, you don't have to approach at all. You can just get into your nice little max range spot here, and you can kind of just fire these shots and make them come at you. And when they do approach you, unlike something with, you know, a slower time to splat like a Jet Squelcher or a backline weapon, this dodge roll gives you a TTK that is comparable, at least, to a lot of frontline weapons. The time to splat is just 1 frame shy of that of the splatter shot, if we ignore the amount of extra time that it takes to dodge roll. It has a faster fire rate than the Tetra Dualies, and bear in mind that this is a weapon that has a lot of range on these shots, so for that amount of range, that is an insanely fast TTK, and super useful in short-range situations. It's not something that you can just expect to beat by nature of closing distance with it. The fact that it can just close and do something like that is crazy, and the advantage of the range does come into play with the TTK, because if something shorter range is trying to approach you, you can be dealing chip damage to it with this mode as it approaches, so that you don't have to hit all 4 shots when you dodge roll in, that you maybe just need 1 or 2 or something. Another really interesting feature of this weapon is that, you know, this is about the max range that you've got for the dual reticle shots. This is about as far out as you can get. But from here, where I can't hit anything, the dodge roll goes so far forward that even though the range of the turret mode shots is shorter by a substantial amount, the difference between the long range shots and the short-range shots is not as big as the dodge roll distance. So what really gives you the longest range, if you want to think about it this way, is dodge roll toward them and use turret mode shots. If they're just out of range, it might actually be worth it to dodge roll forward at them to chase them the rest of the way. So this can be a very useful gap close to keep yourself from getting avoided when you chip someone. So this weapon definitely has some strengths that's a lot of, other weapons that you're comparing it to, Squeezer and Splatana Stamper can't claim to have. Has some weaknesses that those can't claim to have as well. The paint isn't bad, but it's very spotty. So while, this is going to get you special at a relatively normal rate, especially because it scatters so much across open ground, so none of these shots are going to overlap each other. This is also not the most swimmable paint. It's going to take a while to put out a line that's really usable to move through. You can see there are some gaps in there. It's similar to the 96 gal in this way, with the low fire rate resulting in that effect on the paint. The DPS, like we've said, isn't quite the same as something like a Squeezer. It's not quite the same as a frontline dually. So this isn't really what you're trying to use it for. But the main weapon, like we said, is in the conversation. There are definitely justifications you can make on a map mode and team comp basis that you would want to run one of these things over, say, one of the other midline weapons. But there was not really ever a case where you wanted to run this kit over any of those other kits. And now I think that might change. Let's talk about the kit now. Burst Bomb is neither here nor there. Like, I think it's a great option for the weapon to have so that it's not a line of sight weapon. And so I think for that reason, it's going to be fine. There's not, like, so much synergy with the damage numbers or anything that I'm like, this is amazing, like, this changes the weapon completely, like the Carbon Deco. But it is very nice, and I think is going to see a lot more utility than the Ink Mine. The Ink Mine was challenging because it's best used while you're retreating away from someone, but if you're retreating away from someone, why not just kite them with these shots? There are a lot of cases where you really just could zone people out so hard that you didn't need the Ink Mine to help you. So it's not to say that the Ink Mine's useless or anything, but I think a Burst Bomb is going to be useful in a lot more situations. It's going to be useful in cases where you're trying to hit someone up above a ledge that your main weapon can't reach because it's line of sight. And so I think that by itself is really valuable. It's also a mobility tool in case you do want it. Maybe your feet are painted or something. So can't hurt, to have that and to be able to move out of that and not have to take up a dodge roll getting away from something before you use the dodge roll aggressively or to get around the rest of the way around a corner. So I think that's pretty solid, but the Tri-Strikes, I think, are game-changing for it. Tri-Strikes are a special that you really want to be using from pretty far away. It's really awkward and dangerous to try and use it when you're too close to someone because you're stuck just running around and holding this. You can't go squid form. You just have to walk while you're throwing them. So you are extremely vulnerable. Like, it is one of the easiest specials in the game to push because even if they throw the strikes directly at you, because of how long they take to actually detonate, you often can just rush the player down and get out before the first strike goes off. So you have to use them from pretty far back to keep yourself safe. And they are kind of designed in terms of the range that they're given and the way that you throw them to be thrown from that far away. Like, it is kind of tricky to get them to land right in front of you here. I'm not moving my aim very far to go between this range compared to how far I'm having to aim it with the Splat Bomb. Because they have so much more range, the sensitivity on your aiming up and down is way higher. So it can be pretty precise trying to aim out in front of you. It feels like the game is kind of designed in a way to try and encourage you to throw them from further away. And that's exactly where the Douser Dualies are going to be playing anyway. They're going to be playing at their own max range. They're going to be playing outside of the range of a Squeezer. So that's the perfect range for them to throw those out there and maybe try to get their teammates in, maybe displace someone who's been annoying them, so that they can take pot shots as that player is forced out from behind cover. It's a super great fit, and it's a special that absolutely has a place in the game. It's a special that works really well in tower control for specific map mode situations where you need to hit behind cover. It's a good displacement tool if you don't have like a Booyah Bomb you can work in. So like, this is a lot better for the weapon than the Whale was. And the Whale wasn't bad. Whale was a global range special, which is something that a really long-ranged weapon would love to have. But I think it's no contest that this is going to be the far more popular kit of the two, and that simply because of this new kit, we might start seeing this weapon used, at least in some situations, at top level. I know Jared, at the very least, is going to want to be trying it out. Jared has had very good things to say about the main weapon since its release, and with the kit that it's getting now, I can only imagine that that's going to be a consideration now. That being said, Jackpot does have a Bucket player, and Bucket is another Tri-Strike weapon, and that might also be a consideration. You know, you've got another midline weapon that also has Tri-Strike, so they're in competition in a couple of different ways. Obviously, those are different play styles, but the question is, which niche are you going to want on a team more often? And the fact that the one weapon has AoE is definitely not hurting its chances. It might end up that maybe the Bucket is the rushdown, more aggressive option, whereas the Dousers is the kite and poke option, the chip damage option. It does have a burst bomb to follow up with any damage that it's able to get when it hits someone at really long range. So that might be the playstyle for it. Maybe you're pairing this with a bunch of different chip options and hoping to maybe burst bomb someone down or just chip them with the main weapon. It's tricky to say exactly how that midline meta will play out. I can only speculate. It's not exactly my niche as a player, and I also, you know, only have so much access to top-level play and the ability to study that, so we'll see how it goes, but I'm very optimistic about this, and I think any Dualies player who's been looking for a longer-ranged option will love it. I think that midline weapons are really strong right now, and that will give this weapon more of a niche than it would have had on other metas. So if it's going to be strong, it's going to be strong out the gate, and it's definitely something that you should try out and see if it's going to fit on your team comp, if it's something that you find at all interesting and want to try playing it.